Hello, everyone. I'm Ella. I'm the Director of Data Science and Engineering at Shopify. Also an AI researcher and an adjunct assistant professor at the University of Waterloo. And I'm here to tell you a story, actually, a story of data science. This all came about when my daughter came and asked us, "What do you do for living?" I always thought I would win this discussion. So her dad is like her hero. They do like sports together, things together all over. And I was like, the moment that my daughter comes and asks me, what do I do for a living? I will win that because I work in I do robotics. Um, what's cooler than this? And my husband works in low power FPGAs and electronics. So I thought, I'm winning this. Finally, one for mommy. And then the day that she came and asked us, as I take a deep breath of pride, my husband turned his head and said, "Oh, I worked on Mars rover." And her eyes got wider and shiny, so proud of what he does, which is awesome for him. But I was totally gutted because I wanted to win this one. Well, I know you don't know me, but if you do, you know I'm pretty competitive. So what I did is I started research so that I can win this discussion. And this is how this all came about. I realized that the field of data science actually dates back to over 20,000 years ago. Mankind was living at the time in the Paleolithic era as hunters and gatherers, moving from one place to another following food sources. And although this was a prehistoric era in which there is no written proof of how they lived their lives, they actually left us evidence of their early attempts of data storage and data manipulation. So these are the Ishango bones. They were actually found in Congo, and they date back all the way to the 18,000 BC, where humans were living in tribes, and the question of how long my food supplies will last was definitely a driving factor. Tribes people started making notches and tally marks on the bones to keep track of the trading activity and how much supplies they have. This helped them in storing data, but not only that, it also did help them in some basic calculations when they started comparing the bones together to make simplistic predictions of how long the food supplies would last. Almost 15,000 years after, the Sumerian civilization emerged and it adopted an agricultural lifestyle, and it was mainly centered around their temples. Sumerians would donate food to their temples to be stored, and then at the times of droughts, the priest will take it back to feed the people. And as Sumerian civilization grew, the need for record keeping and accounting of grains and crops also grew. And out of necessity came innovation. The priests used triangle pens to make tally marks on a clay token, symbolizing how many of one thing they had. But the thing is, they also had different types of crops and they needed to do symbols to represent what type of crop is this. And from this evolved the first written language known to mankind. 1,000 years after, the abacus came to use into Babylon. It was the first dedicated device constructed specifically for performing calculations. And around the same time, the first libraries started to appear, presenting our first attempts of massive data storage. Around 200 AD, the earliest mechanical computer was ever designed by a Greek scientist for astrological purposes and for tracking the cycle of Olympics. We always loved our sports. It consisted of 30 interlocking bronze gears. By the mid 1600s, statistics emerged in London through experiments to predict mortality in a plague ravaged Europe. By the mid 1800s, the term business intelligence was first used to describe the data analysis to achieve competitive advantage. So it's not a new term as you think it is. By the end of the 1800s, the US government took 7 years to analyze the data collected in the 1880 census. 7 years. That's a long time. And since then, humanity had seen the rise of computing. By mid-1900s, the US government planned the world's first data center to store close to 800 million tax returns and 170 million sets of fingerprints on magnetic tape. Remember the magnetic tape? Around that time, relational databases too were born. By early 2000s, William Clifland officially introduced the discipline of data science as we know it today. He described it as an expansion of statistics in the context of computer science and data mining. He believed that the merger of computer science and statistics would produce a powerful force for innovation. And his prediction was actually right. The advancements started to have an impact on all walks of life, especially sports. Again, as you know, we love our sports. We all have heard the story of Moneyball, and if you didn't, it's an awesome book and it's a great movie. I would highly recommend it. But that was not the only one. There's many examples of that. In 2006 World Cup, a German goalie, Lehmann, had a piece of paper folded in his socks, providing him with stats about how every player on the opposing team would actually be shooting their penalty kicks based on how they did it historically. And interestingly enough, Lehman was able to accurately throw his body towards the direction of the ball almost every time. Impressive, huh? But that was not the only major innovation in the early 2000s. Humans also entered an era of internet usage and data collection. With the launch of MySpace in 2003, Facebook in 2004, and YouTube in 2005, our relationship with the online world has changed forever. And same did our data collection. This compounded with the rise of the mobile first mindset that had led to a fundamental change in the way we live our lives. Our mobile phones now are extension of our fingertips. The availability of information has never have taken a whole different form and has never become easier. This led to the emergence of a new form of competition based on the extensive use of data and analytics and fact-based decision making. So as you can see, what I learned is that data science is a part of long human evolution of data, of using data and seeking knowledge. As humans continue to evolve, the use of data and the need of knowledge will also continue. And the recent advancement on the field of data science are just a step further in the human evolution that will bring change to the way we run our businesses and our society. So today, the power of data science is in the power of insight, getting us to make sense of all the information flurries or data flurries that are coming our way. Our world is pretty complex. We live in a world where we are experiencing exponential growth in our innovation and technological advancements in the last 2 decades. The amount of data produced is just mind-boggling. If you think about it, there is about 2.5 quadrillion bytes of data generated each day. This is huge. And not only that, the truth is that over the last 2 years alone, 90% of data in the world were generated. That's massive. And with all of this coming our way, we are craving more efficiency and convenience. We're craving things to work and give us time and money back. So in the recent years, we have seen companies and products that are being powered by advanced analytics to drive enhanced efficiency in operations and in performance, as well as increased convenience for the end user. In a world of constraints of resources, smart solution can save us both time and money, and definitely can provide a huge competitive advantage. So let me tell you a small story. I was speaking in one of the conferences, and is a young guy, let's call him John, came my way. And he started talking to me about his Nona. His Nona had an amazing bakery that she ran for the last 50 years. Every morning she would wake up very early and she would do her fresh cannolis and her fresh pastries that everybody in the family and everybody in the neighborhood used to love. And people would line up on Nona's store long time ago back in the day to pick up their breakfast pastry. But in the last few years, the traffic on Nona's store has tapered down as the world changed and Nona was struggling to find ends meet. And John, who was a young man in early 20s, still in the university, was just trying to help by taking some shifts from Nona. And one day when he was sitting and looking at some sensors he got for a university project, he decided to install these sensors outside of Nona's store. Not sure what to expect. He was just like playing around and started collecting some data. And one late night, he sat down and looked at what this data says. And what he found was really interesting. What he found that the traffic, that although Nona opens very early in the morning for people to come and get their pastries before they go to work, that the traffic late at night, around 1, 2 a.m. after the bar starts closing, is much higher than her early morning traffic. And John decided to just try for a couple of nights to start opening the store and pick up a couple of shifts at late night. Maybe that will change the situation for Nona. And it actually did. It provided him with a competitive advantage that now he's one of the very few bakeries that are open. And with the amazing pastries that Nona make, actually lineups came again. And Nona now, her store from struggling to make ends meet to a thriving store, um, flourishing with all the, like with really good situation now. So we went from Jean, who knows nothing, to John, king of the north, towards Nona. And the truth is, data in its raw form is not the key, it's not the thing that we crave. The true value of analytics is in transforming the data from its raw form to meaningful insights in the form of knowledge and wisdom. We need to make it traverse the triangle of wisdom to increase its value and its meaning. So if so this is the way, I'm just going to give you a simple way to think about it. If if you think of data as your raw ingredients for a cake, and I'm taking the thread of Nona's pastry with me here, although you might not choose to take a spoonful of flour, one, or maybe you would, but I'm sure that's once in a while, your ingredients is not fully leveraged to its full potential. But if you use some proper tools and some techniques, you can actually transform this raw ingredients into a cake, which is definitely more, has much better value for you than just the raw ingredients. And it's going to be much more enjoyed. But the true value actually comes when you transform that from just information or just a cake into a well decorated uh, cake with contextual information shared with the stakeholders and then eaten. This will help leverage meaningful decision making. And over time, as you eat enough cake and you take enough knowledge, you will grow because you will have higher levels of wisdom, of understanding of what's happening in your domain and in your world and your market. So data science is about transforming data into knowledge and into wisdom. It's actually all about impact. That can be done through an abundance of tools. So like from visualization to coding to all that stuff. But that's one side of the story. The truth is that the purpose of computing is insight, not numbers. Richard Hemming said that. And I was curious, what's insight? What does it really mean? So when you're in doubt, you Google. The Cambridge English Dictionary said it's clear, accurate, and deep intuitive understanding of a complicated problem. That's the meaning of insight. And if data science is about providing meaningful insight to go up the triangle of wisdom, I think the key words here is accurate, clear, and deep intuitive understanding. So if I step back and think about that, the truth is our job is to augment human intelligence with actual knowledge, with additional knowledge in the form, whether it's contextual or aggregated data, whether it's historic or forecasted. The truth is we need to give the decision makers more to augment their current existing knowledge. Our job is to enhance the visibility of the decision maker, save limited time and money resources, and increase the convenience through intelligent systems to make stakeholder and consumers able to make fact-based decisions faster and in a more meaningful way. And for us to do that, we need to know that, which something I found very interesting, is humans retain information in a very different way between the different mediums that we consume information on. So we retain about 80% of what we see, 20% of what we read, and about 10% of what we hear. But that's not it. This is not the only part of it. The truth is, our brains actually function in a very interesting way. We are wired to understand stories. If you think about it, back in the day when we were sitting in the Paleolithic era, when we were sitting around a campfire, the only way for us to transfer information and share knowledge was through stories. We used to tell stories to each other to get information, to pass information along. So we're wired for this. And Plato said, those who tell stories rule society. So our brains are wired for stories, and based on that, our different parts of the brain fire up. Neuroscientists actually have confirmed that decisions are often based on emotions and not logic, regardless how much logical you think you are. USC professor Antonio Damasio found that patients who have brain damage in an area that help to process emotions, which is the prefrontal cortex, struggle to make basic decisions. That when choosing between alternatives, like things as simple as where to eat or when do we meet, becomes really cumbersome, and it becomes a lengthy cost-benefit debate to make a decision. So interestingly, these patients' decision-making skills were significantly impaired by the lack of emotional judgment. Emotions actually play an essential role in helping our brains to navigate alternatives and arrive to decisions quickly. So we hear statistics and we feel stories. And this is proven by science. And there's a whole industry around that. So if you think about the Hollywood industry, as you're watching the show, although you know, or a movie or a scary movie, although you know you're completely safe in your home and that's not you are not at any form of risk, your palms get sweaty or you jump in your seat, because our brains are wired to feel stories. So we're physiologically wired through hormones that are in our bodies. So oxytocin, dopamine, and endorphins, all our body produces all of that at different parts for stories to process different emotions, different feelings. So oxytocin is the love and empathy and collaboration hormone. Dopamine allows focus and motivation and enhances memory function. And endorphins allows for focus, creativity, as well as overall relaxation and happiness. So for us to be able to drive the value and the impact and empower decision making, for us to be able to take data all the way up the triangle of wisdom, we need to create appropriate environment for knowledge sharing. So we need to craft a narrative. So most of the time when we talk about data science, we talk about these concatenated circles, right? Like we talk about knowledge domain, we talk about computer science, and we talk about math. But this is only a small part of what we need to be doing. This is just what we do, we spend most of our time in, and we think this is our world. The truth is, this is one piece of it. But we also need to spend some time on visualization, and we do that. And mainly we do that to enhance clarity. So we can put information in a form of a report to help people process information. Other times also we craft some narrative to explain what's happening. So this is the trend going up, this is the trend going down, and sometimes we compose that in the form of a slide deck or something where we can help people to be engaged with our learnings. But the truth is, what we really need to do and spend a lot of time in is this dark red triangle of focus. This is of change. This is the one that we need to focus our efforts on, because this is the one where we can really drive maximum value of our data. So we need to work on insights that yield actual impact. The insights that is not just accurate, it's not just easily to understand from a visualization aspect, but also that does have the narrative that makes it all come together. So we need to make it simple. And as Albert Einstein said, everything should be made simple as possible, but not simpler. So think about making your insights, think elegant when you're putting together your insights and you're communicating it back. Make sure that your cake is well decorated. And although this is where we are today, and we have done huge strides, our story, this is just the beginning of our story. Our story still continues as humans evolve and move. So I'm going to be sharing with you a few of the major trends that I think will shape up in the next few years. So we're living in an era of craving more and more personalization. We all get very frustrated and annoyed when Siri or Alexa or Google do not do not respond to us with what we are expecting them to do. Um, and we also see it particularly these days with COVID. So if you look at it, although COVID is the same virus, our bodies as humans, as the human population, are reacting extremely different to the same virus. And this is one of the challenges of actually identifying COVID. It reacts very differently to different people, from non-symptomatic to all the way people who need to be in the ER and hospitalized. Even if you control for age group and ethnicity, still the actions are very different. And the truth is, it because although there is same diagnosis, there are different, like on molecular level, we are different. So with this, the field of personalized medicine is an evolving field in an era of individualization and personalization. So although general medicine tries to find solutions that feeds into everybody, there are multiple groups of researchers now across different universities that look at personalized medicine, where different people might have different forms of risk, that need different doses of the same medicine, that will have different responses to different types to the same medicine or different medicines. And that's a whole research field. Another thing that is driving also the era of individualization is our need for hyper personalization. This is when we need software, tools, systems, hardware, even our car. We need it to react to us, to our needs. We're all craving to optimize our time and money, and big part of that is getting the convenience of personalization. So now these systems really care, or should start caring more about getting really to know us. So there is this term on psychographics, which is an extension of demographics. So it's not just knowing who you are, like a female, a male, and these types of properties. It's also knowing what you care about, like what type of music you like, or what's your hobbies, and accordingly make recommendation that is appropriate based on that. And with this, there is also a big discussion about ethics. And that's way beyond just privacy and security. It's how do you incorporate our ethics as humans into AIs? How do you make sure that you're building AI that is socially responsible, and we assess as well assess the social implications? How do you make sure that we control or avoid as much bias as possible in these? So there's a lot of discussion in that aspect. Another major trend is generative models. So there is a lot of work that we have done over the past many years in discriminative models. These are discriminative models are the models that define a decision boundary between classes. So all your classification and all of that. Generative model actually explicitly learn the actual distribution in each class. And these are not very new models. They have been existing for a while, but applications in industry are now emerging more and more. So if you think about it, it can have a massive impact. So if a designer, like this is a simplistic, this is an example from a commerce idea where like a designer would just design his own products, his or her own products, and then they can try the different materials by generative models. So another example also is morphing. So if you have materials or if you have a couple of designs and you want to see how it would look as you merge them, that's again another application that can help with um, in commerce areas. Also, it can have very interesting applications in media. And I'm going to share with you a really interesting example that I found. So here you go.
We're entering an era in which our enemies can make it look like anyone is saying anything at any point in time, even if they would never say those things. This is a dangerous time. Moving forward, we need to be more vigilant with what we trust from the internet. That's a time when we need to rely on trusted news sources.
So as you can see, it's actually quite interesting how that generative model was able to create that in a very smooth way. Another major trend is socially aware AI. So if we're going to have AI and intelligent systems and data-driven solutions all throughout the different parts of our lives, the truth is for us to be able to trust that, we humans communicate with each other in ways that AI needs to replicate. So our communication is not just verbal. We communicate with our pauses in our discussions. We communicate with our bodies. We communicate with our facial expressions. And all of these things tie to our trust level with each other. So we feel safer when we're communicating with people with certain tones, like calmer tones, or like when people are more open in the way their postures are. So all of that needs to be replicated by AI to be able for us to be able to comfortably interact with it. So there is a major trend that is starting now and being invested in for the future regarding socially aware AI. And big part of it is actually effective computing, understanding how you feel and your emotions to respond accordingly. But the truth is, we have a very wide range of emotions, and it varies a lot at different points of time. And not only that, we're not all the same. Our reactions will vary, our responses will vary and change over time. So there is definitely no one size fits all. So this is definitely an emerging field that can help a lot as we evolve as AI future evolves over time. And you know what? To circle back with what I told my daughter after everything that I've done, I told her I am a data scientist, a human with super analytical powers. I'm a problem solver, I'm a treasure hunter, and I do all of this while I'm telling stories. And I'm very proud to say she actually wants to grow up to be the director of data science in Shopify. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Ella. I love the baking analogy. I've got a sweet tooth, so that was right up my alley. So thank you for being here, and thank you everyone for tuning in. We don't have time for questions, but Ella, if you have a moment, there are a couple in the chat that I am sure people would be thrilled if you gave an answer.